Hey guys, welcome to HipHughes History. We're banging out the 1908 election as we continue to knock these bad boys off. This time we're going to take another crack at William Jennings Bryan, going after the big man, William Howard Taft. It's Bill v. Bill, baby. So giddy up for the learning, guys. Let's go get her done right now. Electorally, guys, it's a walloping. The big man, William Howard Taft, is going to win with 321 electoral votes against William Jennings Bryan's 162 electoral votes. And if you look at the big map, we might as well do that right now. It's pretty easy to see where William Jennings Bryan, the Democrat, is getting most of his support. That's the solid South right there, guys. They're voting like 90%, 10 in favor of the Democrat because they're still kind of post-Civil War, really pro-Democrat, and, you know, the Republicans represent those darn Yankees. African Americans are severely hindered by Jim Crow laws. They're really not allowed to vote. So the Democrats are going to have a lock on that for a very, very long time. Now, the populist William Jennings Bryan also carried Nevada, Nebraska, and Colorado, and we'll tie in kind of that populist sentiment of the Democratic Party a little bit later. It's 52% to 43%. So in terms of the popular vote, you know, we're talking about maybe a 2 million vote difference, 7 million, 5 million, something like that. So it's pretty solidly in favor of William Howard Taft. So let's look at the candidates, we'll look at the issues, and then we'll see if we can't sum it up and learn something. So the big man, William Howard Taft, and I say the big man because he's a big man. He's like 300 plus pounds. Tried to get him to trim down a little bit and kind of a resort in Virginia before the election. I don't know if it worked. But he is the Secretary of War for the very popular current president, Teddy Roosevelt. And of course, Teddy Roosevelt is kind of an oddball in the Republican historical realm of things because he is a progressive Republican. He believes in government. He believes in business. He believes in capitalism, but he believes in regulation. So he's done some very big things, not only in foreign policy, like the Russo-Japanese War, the guy got a Nobel Peace Prize, but domestically, his square deal has passed some really major legislation, mainly in the kind of realm of consumer safety. We have the Hepburn Act, which is regulating prices on the railroads in order to kind of calm down that, you know, radical element of the Populist Party and the Socialist Party that the government is doing something. And we also, you know, post the Jungle coming out by Upton Sinclair, we also have the Meat Inspection Act and the FDA, the Food and Drug Act, Safety Act. So there is legislation under Roosevelt's belt, and Taft is Roosevelt's protege. Roosevelt could have ran for a third term, but he declared early in 1904 that he wasn't going to seek another term, and he stuck to his word, and he adopted Taft. He fought for his nomination. He saw him as an extension of himself, in a sense. Roosevelt was so popular that when they nominated William Taft in, I believe it was Chicago in 1908, when they mentioned Teddy Roosevelt's name, this was Henry Cabot Lodge, the famous senator Republican, the crowd went freaking wild. Like 49 minutes wild, chanting 4 more years. And you can only imagine what William Howard Taft thought all about this, that he really isn't the popular one. He really isn't the one that everybody wants to run. He's the one that, you know, Teddy Roosevelt wants to run, in a sense. William Howard Taft is carrying the scepter of Teddy Roosevelt. He's, you know, calling for more of the square deal. Some people said that Taft stood for take advice from Teddy, because he was so close to the president. And you can see in some of these cartoons right here just how much the popular sentiment is that, you know, Roosevelt is carrying Taft. This is really Roosevelt's re-election, in a sense. The issues they're fighting, you know, they're really pro-tariff, they're protectionist, and when it comes to the economy, they are throwing what I call dog biscuit capitalistic stuff out there. You know, you throw a dog biscuit to the people by getting some type of regulation on this gap between the very poor and the very rich that is society. So there are certain parts of their platform that are and seemingly pro-labor, allowing strikes, but allowing to have injunctions when the federal government deems it necessary. So on their face, they're not anti-labor, they're not anti-reform, but they also are getting huge contributions from the business community. Taft claims that monopolies aren't necessarily a bad thing, trusts are a bad thing, and he's going to continue to trust bust. He trust busted even more than Teddy. He went after U.S. Steel, which Teddy didn't want him to go after. But that is pretty much their platform domestically. They're going to keep going the same path. They're going to have a square deal, so it's fair between business and the workers. In terms of foreign policy, they're a little bit more aggressive than the Democratic Party. Taft was the first governor of the Philippines, so he believes in this kind of white man's burden, kind of using American empireness to civilize the uncivilized. So that's pretty much their plank. Now, let's take a look at the other guy. He's going for the three-er. The three-er. So maybe the third time's a charm for William Jennings Bryan. William Jennings Bryan is a populist. Remember, in 1904, if you haven't watched that election, it's right there, the Democrats ran a more conservative candidate, Parker. And Parker was much more pro-business, he was pro-gold, and he wasn't big on some of the liberal populist agenda from the Democratic Party coming from, the more Western sect. The Southern sect is pretty conservative, but these Western populists and farmers are starting to get close to Eugene Debs. We don't like that, right? So William Jennings Bryan is back. He ran in 1896, he ran in 1900, and he lost both times. Now, he's not going to use the silver issue again. If you remember, this is a hot issue. Hot. It's like silver or gold. So gold won. So they're taking the silver thing kind of off the platform, and they're really focusing on this is the People's Party. They're going to the left again. They're basically saying that we need campaign finance reform. Way back in 1908, they want to be transparent about where money is coming from. They don't want corporations to be able to give big money to candidates. They want to take that off the realm. And they're definitely more pro-labor than the Republican Party. Not as radical as some would like them, but they want to basically free them, unions, labor unions, from antitrust lawsuits. They want them to be able to grow. They want them to be able to represent workers. In terms of foreign policy, they're definitely a little bit more tempered than the Republican Party. They want to kind of withdraw from these places around the world and, install democratic regimes and get back to Dodge, get back to the United States. But there isn't a huge amount of difference between these candidates because Taft is running as a progressive Republican. And even though William Jennings Bryan is a populist, that he's probably a little bit more radical than he's letting on to, he has to hold that Democratic coalition together. He has to hold that more conservative Southern part and the economic conservatives in the Democratic Party that don't want to see a move towards what you would call socialism. One mistake that William Jennings Bryan made was early in his campaign, he had mentioned that he was interested in the idea of the government owning the railroads, and the Republicans, just like today, were all over that, saying that he's a socialist, that he's a radical, he's a revolutionary, wants to abolish private property, and William Jennings Bryan probably paid for that when it came to the polls. So let's summarize the election. We'll look at the map one more time, then we'll say giddy up and good night. Vote for Taft now. You can vote for Bryan anytime. That was one of the slogans that they went with. So remember, guys, that we have that solid South that's Democratic, not so much because they love William Jennings Bryan, but because he has a D in front of his name. And you can see the few states out west that voted for Bryan. That's kind of the old populist sentiment that's still out there. We have Eugene Debs on the Socialist Party platform. We also have a Independence Party. William Randolph Hearst almost went for that. So there's a good 4 or 5% of the country that's voting even more left to the Democratic Party. But this is an election that's going down as a drumming. William Jennings Bryan, that's it, you're done. He's going to come back and endorse Woodrow Wilson, but he's not going to go for the four-peat-hood of loserhood, I guess. He will be back, of course, for the Scopes Monkey trial in the 1920s, so he's not quite gone yet. But remember, he also has a very kind of religious twinge to him. So socially, he's very conservative, but when it comes to economic issues, he pushed the gauntlet a little bit, but he didn't quite get there. What's interesting is that many of his ideas are going to be adopted, including the 17th Amendment, the direct election of senators. He wanted an income tax. He's going to get that. So William Jennings Bryan's going to get it. It's just not going to be by him. So giddy up for the learning one more time, guys. We hope you learned something about the 1908 election. Check out all of the other election videos in the playlist right there. We're racking them up. We've done like 17, 18. I don't know. I lose count, don't you know? And if you haven't subscribed, please press the big red funky button. It takes like 2 seconds and it's free. And then like unicorns get wings and such like that. So there you go, guys. We'll see you next time you press my buttons, and I'm going to say it because I believe it. Where attention goes, energy flows.